The rain fell incessantly that night, creating a symphony of drops against the roof of the local restaurant. I was sitting at a corner table, with my head down, trying to lose myself in the pages of a book that I wasn't actually reading. The place was relatively empty, except for a few occupied tables and a group of young people laughing loudly, seemingly enjoying themselves without a care in the world. The atmosphere was cozy, but I couldn't relax. Timidity had always been a shadow that accompanied me, and I preferred the company of fictional characters to interacting with real people. As I tried to dive into the story, a louder noise caught my attention. I looked up and saw an elderly couple sitting a few tables away. The man, with his gray hair and thick-framed glasses, was trying to talk to his wife, who seemed a bit confused. But instead of a welcoming environment, they were being the target of laughs and insults from a group of young people who, without any respect, were amusing themselves at their expense. "Look at Grandpa and Grandma. What are you doing here?" "Playing bingo," one of the youngsters shouted, followed by the others' mean-spirited laughter. My heart began to race. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Those words, those laughs, were cutting like knives. The couple looked down, clearly embarrassed and ashamed, and their image deeply disturbed me. I knew I should do something, but my shyness was an almost insurmountable wall. The fear of exposing myself and suffering some reprisal paralyzed me. However, as I watched the scene unfold, something inside me began to change. A wave of courage, which I didn't know I possessed, started to form. I couldn't just sit there, watching the injustice. With a tremendous effort, I got up from the chair. My legs were shaking, but I walked over to the table where the group of youngsters was. "Hey! Why are you doing this?" My voice came out firmer than I expected, and they all turned to stare at me. The laughter stopped, and silence took over the room. "What are you going to do, little boy?" one of the youngsters, the tallest one, taunted. He had a mocking smile, but I didn't back down. "You don't have the right to treat these people like this. They deserve respect, not ridicule." My heart was racing, and I could feel the heavy stares on me, but I stood firm. The elderly couple, who had seemed defeated before, now looked at me with an expression of surprise and gratitude. "Look at the hero of the day," said another youngster, sarcastically. "What are you going to do? Call your mom?" "No, but I can call the police if this continues," I replied, trying to keep calm. It wasn't just bravery but also the certainty that I was doing the right thing. A moment of tension hung in the air, and then, to my surprise, the tallest youngster took a step back, as if reconsidering his attitude. "Let's go, this isn't worth it," he said, almost reluctantly. The group began to move away, and within seconds, their table was empty. As the situation calmed down, I returned to the elderly couple's table. They had tears in their eyes, and the man, with a trembling voice, said, "Thank you so much, young man. You had courage. This doesn't happen every day." "It was nothing, sir. I just couldn't stand by and watch." "No one deserves to be treated like that," I replied, feeling a wave of relief and satisfaction. The couple smiled, and I realized that, for a brief moment, I had truly made a difference. As I left the restaurant, the rain had lessened, but the cold still cut through the air. As I walked toward my car, an elegant figure approached me. He was tall, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, and had a piercing gaze. "You're Jake, aren't you?" he asked, with a soft and controlled voice. "Yes, I am," I replied, somewhat surprised. "Can I help you with something?" "Actually, I'm a messenger for Mr. Thompson," he said, and my heart skipped a beat. Mr. Thompson was a name I had heard in town. A millionaire many said was enigmatic and eccentric. "He'd like to speak with you. Your courage today didn't go unnoticed." "He wants to speak with me?" I asked, confused. What could a man like him want with me? The idea of being noticed by someone so influential was both thrilling and terrifying. "Yes, he has a particular interest in your act of bravery. If you're willing, I can take you to him," the man affirmed, with a smile that seemed genuine, but there was something in his eyes that made me wary. I don't know. What does he want? My voice wavered. Just a conversation, Jake. An opportunity. You might be surprised by what he has to offer, the man said, looking at me intently. I hesitated. It was a tempting invitation, but at the same time, a warning signal lit up in my mind. What could I expect from a millionaire? What did he really want? But looking back and seeing the elderly couple, and remembering the gratitude in their eyes, I realized that this could be an opportunity to change my life in a way I never imagined. All right, I replied, with a mix of nervousness and curiosity. I'll go. The man smiled and motioned for me to follow. As we walked toward the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change drastically. What would this new journey be like? I didn't know, but the feeling of entering an unknown world was palpable. You won't regret this, Jake, the man said, as if he could read my thoughts. And as I got into the car, I left behind the rainy night and the small courage I had found, anxious and apprehensive about what lay ahead. I woke up with the sunlight filtering through the curtains, a soft glow that filled my room and woke me with the lightness of a new day. My heart was still pounding with the memories of the previous night, a whirlwind of emotions and the adrenaline that had pushed me to stand up and defend that elderly couple. I, Jake, the shy one, the backup, had found courage in the most unexpected moment. But now, with the daylight, the reality of my decision began to materialize, and a pang of anxiety settled in my chest. I got out of bed, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the morning breeze coming through the window. The house was quiet, as if it too was absorbing the tranquility of the new day. I looked in the mirror. My reflection showed a boy who, inside, still felt like a stranger. But there was something different, a subtle change that I couldn't identify. I went downstairs and, upon opening the door, a spectacle awaited me. A luxurious car, a gleaming black and impeccable, was parked in front of my house. My heart raced and a wave of confusion took over me. The sight of the car seemed straight out of a movie, a symbol of power and wealth that I only knew from afar. Cautiously, I approached, observing the vehicle's details, the elegant lines, and the gleaming logo. A well-dressed man, wearing a dark suit and a perfectly adjusted tie, got out of the car and approached me. He had a confident smile and a look that conveyed a mix of interest and intrigue. "You must be Jake," he said, extending his hand. "My name is Mr. Thompson. I'm here to talk to you." "Hi," I managed to mumble, not knowing what to think. What did this man want from me? What was happening? "I'm an admirer of your courage, Jake. What you did last night was remarkable. The world needs more people like you." He spoke with an eloquence that left me a bit disconcerted. "I'd like to invite you to a meeting at my mansion. I have a project in mind that might interest you." "A project?" I asked, trying to hide the unease in my voice. Could this be a scam? I just wanted to return to the safety of my routine. "Yes, a project that can open many doors for you. Come, I promise you won't regret it." He winked, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and fear. After a moment of hesitation, I agreed. "Okay, I'll go." The road to Mr. Thompson's mansion was lined with majestic trees and grand houses that passed like shadows by my window. My heart was racing, not just from the adrenaline but from the unknown that awaited me. Upon arrival, I was left in awe of the place's beauty. The mansion was a masterpiece of architecture, with large windows, an imposing facade, and a garden that seemed to have come out of a fairy tale. I was welcomed by a staff that treated me as if I were a celebrity. I thanked them, feeling a bit embarrassed, while I followed Mr. Thompson down the hallway. The walls were adorned with impressive works of art, and the soft lighting created an almost magical atmosphere. "Come in, make yourself at home," he said, opening the door to a luxurious lounge. The environment was filled with comfort and elegance, but a strange sense of unease began to grow in me. Mr. Thompson seemed to notice this, and, as we sat down, he began to talk about his intentions. "Jake, you have incredible potential. What you did that night was more than just courage, it was a demonstration of character. I want you to be part of something bigger." What do you mean? I asked, trying to understand what he really wanted from me. I'm developing a project that involves young people like you, people who have the ability to inspire and lead. With your talent, you can stand out. Imagine having your voice heard, your potential recognized. I'm talking about opportunities that can change your life. I couldn't take my eyes off him. The way he spoke was hypnotic, and for a moment, I let myself get carried away. And how do I become part of this? I'll show you, he replied, a mysterious glint in his eyes. But first, you need to understand that this world demands commitment and courage. Are you willing to take the risk? A wave of excitement mixed with fear coursed through my body. I'm willing, I replied, perhaps quicker than I should have. What do I need to do? Mr. Thompson smiled. Great! You won't regret it. But keep in mind that there will be challenges and sometimes difficult decisions to make. It's crucial that you're aware of the others. What do you mean by the others? I asked, my curiosity consuming me. Oh, well, you'll see. I can't reveal everything now. That's part of the mystery and adventure. But I can assure you that you won't be alone. There will be other young people like you, all in search of their own truths. Whispers of my instinct warned me that something was off. What would these challenges be? What did Mr. Thompson really want? But the excitement and promise of a better future overshadowed my caution. The conversation continued, and with every word he spoke, I let myself be more and more enveloped in the web of promises he wove. Deep down, a small voice insisted that I should be more careful, that something didn't fit. But I ignored it, immersed in the idea that I could finally have a chance to change my life. At the end of the conversation, Mr. Thompson led me to the front door. Welcome to the beginning of a new journey, Jake. I'm looking forward to working with you. Me too, I replied, even without knowing exactly what I had gotten myself into. As I walked away from the mansion, a strange feeling of unease settled in my chest. The car that brought me was still there, waiting. I looked back one last time and saw Mr. Thompson watching me through the window, an enigmatic smile on his lips. The road back seemed longer and darker. A question echoed in my mind: what had I really accepted? What awaited me on that journey that seemed so promising but at the same time so obscure? The feeling that something was about to change, and not necessarily for the better, began to deepen in my mind. The sun shone brightly when I arrived at Mr. Thompson's mansion. The contrast with the rainy night before was striking, and I felt a bit out of place, as if I had been thrown from a nightmare straight into a fairy tale. The mansion's entrance was imposing, with white columns and a perfectly manicured garden. I hesitated, looking at the enormous wrought iron gate that slowly opened, revealing a friendly receptionist who greeted me with a smile. Welcome, Jake. Mr. Thompson is expecting you. Please, follow me. As I walked through the entrance hall, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The walls were adorned with impressive artworks, and the marble floor reflected the natural light coming through the large windows. The environment was luxurious, but there was something oppressive in the air, a sense that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. The receptionist led me to a spacious lounge where a group of young people was gathered. They seemed as anxious as I was. As soon as I entered, the conversations dwindled, and everyone turned their eyes to me. A girl with wavy brown hair, who seemed to be the center of attention, smiled and approached. Hi, you must be Jake. I'm Mia. Nice to meet you. Her voice was sweet, and I immediately felt a bit of comfort in her presence. Hi, nice to meet you, I responded, trying to hide my shyness. We all received the invitation from Mr. Thompson. He's, well, different, isn't he? Said a tall boy with dark hair and a penetrating gaze. His name was Alex, and he had a confident demeanor that intimidated me. Yes, hi. I don't really know what to expect, I mumbled, looking around. It's an incredible place, but you'll realize that we all have our stories. Each of us went through something that brought us here, Mia commented while sitting next to me. Stories of overcoming, I imagine, I said, trying to fit in. What did you face? The young people began to share their experiences, and each story was more impactful than the last. Alex talked about how he overcame dependency issues, and another boy, who introduced himself as Lucas, spoke about his battle with depression. However, as the stories unfolded, I noticed there was a subtext in their words, something that wasn't clearly expressed. But what about you, Jake? What brought you here? Alex asked, looking at me with curiosity. I'm just a regular guy, I replied, feeling the weight of their expectations. Recently, I defended an elderly couple in a restaurant. That ended up catching Mr. Thompson's attention. Mia smiled encouragingly. That's amazing, Jake. Courage isn't something everyone has. You must be here for a reason. But as the conversations continued, a sense of discomfort began to grow in me. The tone of the stories told by those young people seemed to change. There was a tension in the air, as if they were more concerned than willing to open up. It was then that I realized there might be something more behind the facade of the project Mr. Thompson had proposed. The afternoon passed, and dinner was served. The table was a masterpiece, covered with white linens and fine dishes. During the meal, Mr. Thompson appeared, his charming smile contrasting with the way he seemed to analyze each of us. I'm so glad you all could come, he began, his voice as smooth as silk. You're a special group, and I've chosen you personally. Together, we will form an incredible team. The young people exchanged looks, and I realized there was a mix of excitement and apprehension in each of them. Mr. Thompson continued, what you don't know is that each of you has hidden potential. And I'm here to help you discover it. After dinner, we were led to a luxurious living room where Mr. Thompson began to explain his plan. He talked about an innovative entertainment project that, according to him, would change all our lives. The idea of becoming part of something grand made my heart race, but there was a strange feeling that there was something deeper in his words. You'll be challenged to step out of your comfort zone. It's not just about fun, it's about overcoming and self-discovery, he said, looking at each of us with a sparkle in his eyes. I looked at the others, trying to read their expressions. Alex seemed intrigued, while Lucas was visibly nervous, his fingers drumming on the table. Mia, on the other hand, was fascinated, as if she were daydreaming about Mr. Thompson's promises. But what if we don't want to participate? Lucas timidly asked, breaking the silence that had formed. Mr. Thompson smiled, but there was a coldness in his eyes. Oh, but the choice is yours. However, remember that opportunities like this are rare. Think carefully. The rest of the night was filled with discussions and debates. Some were enthusiastic, while others were hesitant. I felt divided, attracted by the idea of changing my life, but uneasy about how Mr. Thompson referred to the challenge. A part of me wanted to believe he had good intentions, but another part whispered that there was something darker in this story. As the days passed, the tension increased. The meetings became more frequent and the challenges more intense. I observed them, trying to discern what was really happening. What was this project that Mr. Thompson promised? Was it really an opportunity, or was there something more sinister behind it? One night, while we were gathered in the living room, the conversation took a more serious turn. Alex stood up and, with a serious look, said, "We need to be honest with each other. What do we really know about Mr. Thompson? What does he expect from us?" His words hung in the air, and I could feel the tension rising. The group started discussing, and the atmosphere became increasingly heavy. Voices rose, and the division between those who accepted Mr. Thompson's proposals and those who hesitated became evident. This can't be just about entertainment. We need to understand the risks involved, I said, trying to join the debate. Mia looked at me, her eyes filled with concern. Do you really think he's manipulating us? I don't know, but something isn't right, I replied, feeling a chill down my spine. We need to be prepared for anything. It was at that moment that I realized we were all involved in a game much bigger than we had imagined. What seemed like an opportunity for growth and overcoming was turning into something that could put us in danger. And with each passing day, the feeling that we were being watched and manipulated became more intense. The night ended, but the unease remained. The idea that there was a dark plan behind everything we were experiencing began to consume my mind. I needed to uncover the truth, and this quest would make the journey even more challenging. The faint light of late afternoon filtered through the mansion's curtains, casting golden rays that danced on the polished wooden floor. My heart was pounding as I walked through the opulent corridors, each step echoing a mix of anxiety and determination. I needed to know more about what was really happening there. Since entering that world, everything had changed. The initial excitement had now turned into growing discomfort. "Jake! Where are you?" Lucas's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. He appeared at the end of the corridor, with a worried expression and a look that begged for answers. "I'm here, Lucas." "We need to talk," I said, motioning for him to come closer. "About what?" "You seem different," he replied, looking around as if expecting someone to be listening. "I saw something." "In the basement," I confessed, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "It's worse than you think. They're recording everything we do. It's a kind of cruel reality show." Lucas's face paled. He had always been the most sensible among us, and now his hesitation made me even more uneasy. "Reality show? Jake, are you serious? How do you know that?" I found a video. They're forcing the young people to do dangerous tasks, Lucas. And it's all for that man's entertainment. "I can't stay here and be a part of this," I said, the urgency in my voice growing. "But what if we're wrong? What if it's just a way to improve our lives? Think of all the money and fame we could gain." Lucas argued, his look alternating between skepticism and doubt. "At what cost?" I retorted, my voice rising. "I don't want to be a pawn in a macabre game." "And what about the others? You saw their faces, Lucas. They're as lost as we are." He hesitated, the conflict evident in his gaze. It was as if he was fighting an internal storm, and I could feel the pressure of the expectations Mr. Thompson had placed on us. And if they don't let us leave?" Lucas asked, almost in a whisper. "We need to get out before it's too late." "We need to plan something," I said, already starting to imagine possible escape routes. "I don't know, Jake. What do you suggest?" Lucas seemed increasingly disheartened. "Let's go to the basement. You need to see what I saw. Then we can decide together what to do," I proposed, hoping that the reality of the footage would wake him up. He took a deep breath and finally nodded. "All right, let's go. But if something happens, we need to have a plan for escape." We descended the stairs, and each step felt heavier than the last. The air in the basement was dense, charged with an almost palpable tension. When we arrived, the wooden door creaked as it opened, revealing a dark and claustrophobic space. The dim light from a hanging lamp illuminated a corner of the room, where there was a pile of recording equipment and, in a corner, a screen displaying the footage I had found. "Jake, what is this?" Lucas asked, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Watch," I said, with a knot in my throat. The images showed young people in risky situations, some being challenged to perform dangerous tasks, while others looked terrified, their expressions of despair seeming so real. A sense of panic took over me. "This is insane!" Lucas exclaimed, his voice almost echoing in the empty space. "I told you it was. And it's all for that man's amusement." "We have to do something about it," I said, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "But what?" "We can't just run away. What if he catches us?" Lucas's concern was palpable. "We need proof. We need to show someone what's happening here," I suggested, my mind working a mile a minute. "If we can record this, we can seek help." Lucas seemed hesitant, but the determination in my gaze began to convince him. "Okay, but let's be quick. We can't let anyone see us." Carefully, we began to record the images on the screen with my phone. My heart was pounding in my chest as I looked around, feeling that at any moment someone could appear and catch us. "Let's get out of here now," I said as soon as we finished. The weight of what we had seen still hung over us, and the reality of what was happening began to settle on our shoulders like a dark cloud. We quickly walked back to the stairs, but as we were about to leave, we heard footsteps approaching. "Jake! Lucas! Where are you?" Mr. Thompson's voice echoed down the corridor, and my heart stopped. "Quick!" I whispered, pulling Lucas behind a pile of boxes. The man entered the basement, his imposing presence almost making us hold our breath. "I know you're here. There's no use hiding. You have no idea what you're getting into," he said, his voice low and threatening. The tension was unbearable. I looked at Lucas, who was pale and wide-eyed, and we realized we needed to be clever. "We need to get out now," I murmured. We waited a few moments until Mr. Thompson walked away. When he finally went up the stairs, taking a different direction, I decided it was our chance. "Let's go," I whispered, pulling Lucas out of our hiding spot. We ran up the stairs, my heart racing, each beat echoing the adrenaline coursing through my body. When we reached the upper floor, the mansion seemed even more oppressive, the shadows dancing on the walls as if they were watching us. "We need to find an exit," I said, my mind racing with what to do next. What if he catches us? What if he discovers we have the recordings? Lucas asked, his voice full of worry. "We can't think that way. We need to act before it's too late," I responded, already visualizing an escape plan. The doors were locked, but there was a window in the next room that seemed more promising. Running toward it was the only option left, and the urgency pushed me to move forward. "There!" I pointed, and Lucas nodded, already following my steps. When we reached the window, I looked outside and saw the well-maintained garden, but the height was a challenge. "We can do this," I said, trying to stay calm. "If we're quick, he won't have time to catch up." Lucas took a deep breath and started climbing. I followed, feeling the adrenaline spike. The cold night wind hit my face, and for a brief moment, the sensation of freedom enveloped me. But the reality of what we were facing soon set in again. "We're almost there," I said, helping Lucas climb. "Just a little more." Finally, we managed to squeeze through the window. The fresh air hit our faces, but the feeling of freedom was quickly overshadowed by the awareness that we were escaping something much bigger than us. "Jake, now what?" Lucas asked, looking around, clearly nervous. "We need to move away from the mansion." "Let's head to the forest," I suggested, pointing to the darkness that stretched out before us. The forest was dense and dark, but it was our only path to escape the trap we had fallen into. With each step, I felt the adrenaline diminishing, but the need to act still burned inside me. We weren't just fugitives, we were young people determined to expose the truth and protect others who might be in the same clutches of Mr. Thompson. And so, as the shadows of the forest enveloped us, a new determination grew within us. The fight was just beginning, and I knew that whatever our next move was, we couldn't fail. The night at Mr. Thompson's mansion was shrouded in an atmosphere of glamour and tension. The sparkling lights illuminated the immense hall, where guests conversed in small groups, laughing and toasting with crystal glasses. Lucas and I were hidden in a corner, watching everything with bated breath. The plan we had devised seemed simple in theory: expose Mr. Thompson during the party and reveal his true intentions. But as the engaging music filled the air, fear began to erode my determination. "Jake, are you sure this is going to work?" Lucas whispered, his nervous eyes moving between the guests' faces. He was nervous, and I didn't blame him. Being there felt like being in a trap, and the survival instinct was screaming for us to leave. "We need to do this," I responded, trying to keep my voice firm. "If we don't expose what he's doing, more young people will suffer. I can't let that happen." Lucas nodded hesitantly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He seemed to know we were facing a giant, and the idea of going against someone as powerful and manipulative as Mr. Thompson terrified him. But I also knew he felt the same indignation I did. We had witnessed the horrors being inflicted on other young people. It was time to put a stop to it. As we moved through the party, I noticed Mr. Thompson was at the center of attention. He was surrounded by well-dressed men and women, all laughing and admiring his presence. The man exuded charm and power, but behind that smile was an abyss of darkness. I remembered the recordings I had found in the basement, the dangerous tasks the young people were forced to perform. My determination solidified. "Lucas, let's get closer to him. When I start talking, you activate the recording," I said, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Lucas hesitated but finally agreed. With firm steps, we approached the group where Mr. Thompson was. As soon as he noticed our presence, his smile widened, but there was something in his eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. "Jake! Lucas! So good to see you here," he exclaimed, as if he really cared. "I hope you're enjoying the party." "Actually, Mr. Thompson, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice firm, despite the growing fear. He raised an eyebrow, and the guests around him began to pay attention. "About what, my young man?" "About what really happens in this mansion. About your project, and what you do with the other young people," I declared, feeling the weight of the words in my mouth. The murmurs among the guests grew, and I could see curiosity turning into discomfort. "You're referring to something very serious, Jake," he responded, his tone now more somber. "You should be careful with the accusations you make." "Careful? You speak of being careful while manipulating human lives for your own entertainment?" I retorted, the anger growing inside me. The environment became tense, and I could feel all eyes on us. "Jake, that's not how things work," Lucas interjected, nervous, but I could see he was starting to feel encouraged. "We have proof of what's happening here. We can't stay silent." "Proof? What do you think that will change?" Mr. Thompson smiled, but there was a coldness in his expression. "Do you really believe you can challenge me and get away with it? You don't know who you're dealing with." What he said made me tremble, but I couldn't back down. "No matter how powerful you are, the truth always comes out, and we won't let you continue with this." The tension was palpable. I could see that some guests were beginning to move away, while others watched with interest, as if they were watching a play. It was the moment when everything could change, but the light of hope began to fade when I realized that Mr. Thompson was a step ahead. He had already perceived our intention. "You really think I don't know each of you?" he said, his tone calm and threatening. "I know about your investigations. And I also know you have no idea what you're about to face." He gestured, and suddenly, two men approached us with threatening expressions. Panic took over me. "Lucas, it's time to activate the recording," I shouted, but before he could do anything, the men surrounded us. "You're not going anywhere," one of them said, while the other firmly held my arm. "You can't do this." I protested, but I knew the situation was critical. The party, which had seemed like a dream before, now turned into a nightmare. "Oh, but I can. And I can do much more," Mr. Thompson responded, a satisfied smile on his face. "You think you have control of the situation, but I'm the maestro here." As the men held me, a wave of despair swept over me. I looked at Lucas, who now seemed petrified, but there was a spark of determination in his eyes. He couldn't let it all end like this. We had come so far. "Jake, I can't let this happen," he murmured, almost to himself, but I knew he was thinking of all the young people who had suffered at Mr. Thompson's hands. "Lucas, don't give up. Let's fight," I shouted, even knowing the situation seemed hopeless. But at that moment, a thought occurred to me. The recording! If Lucas could record everything that was happening, we still had a chance. With unexpected strength, I managed to free myself from one of the men's grip, pushing him aside. "Lucas, record now!" I shouted, as I turned to face Mr. Thompson again. But before I could do anything, he had already approached, and his hand found my neck, squeezing tightly. "You don't know who you're dealing with," "Boy," he whispered, his piercing gaze sucking all the courage I had gathered. The world around me seemed to spin, but amidst the despair, a brilliant idea emerged in my mind. With a quick movement, I managed to pull his tie, causing him to lose balance. I seized the opportunity and moved away, breathing heavily as I watched the confusion spread. "Lucas, let's go!" I shouted, and together, we moved toward the exit, but the panic had already spread through the party, and the door seemed farther than ever. As we ran, I felt the battle was far from over. Mr. Thompson wouldn't give up so easily, and I knew he had eyes and ears everywhere. But there was something inside me that refused to surrender. That night, that mansion, and all the secrets it hid couldn't defeat us. I had to find a way to expose the truth, not just for me, but for all the young people trapped in the clutches of a monster. The night was wrapped in a mantle of shadows and mystery when I decided to return to Mr. Thompson's mansion. The wind blew cold, and the full moon lit my way, but anxiety pulsed in my chest, as if it wanted to escape. I had spent the last few days planning this, reliving each moment when Lucas's gaze became hesitant, each word Mr. Thompson uttered with that unbearable confidence, as if he were always one step ahead of all of us. "I can't leave it like this," I murmured to myself as I approached the mansion's gate, which now looked more like a fortress than a home. The house, with its imposing walls and dark windows, seemed to watch me, ready to welcome or devour. But I wasn't there to be intimidated. With a burst of courage, I pushed the gate and entered. The sound of the lock echoed in my mind like a signal that it was time to act. The dim entrance light contrasted with the darkness around me, and each step I took seemed to echo in oppressive silence. The mansion was empty, but I knew Mr. Thompson's presence still lingered in the air like a threatening shadow. I walked toward the office where I had seen Mr. Thompson's computer. He had a security system, but I had the evidence I needed. If I can access those files, maybe I can expose everything, I thought. The plan was clear in my mind, but the adrenaline made it hard to focus. When I reached the office door, I hesitated. What if he was there? What if his henchmen were ready to intercept me? I took a deep breath, remembering each young person I had met, each conversation. They didn't deserve this. I have to do this, I thought, and pushed the door open. The office was dark, but the computer screen glowed like a beacon. Cautiously, I approached and turned on the computer. A clicking sound echoed through the room, and the screen lit up my face. I began searching for the files I had seen before, but to my surprise, the screen was locked. "Damn it!" I thought, frustration growing. But then I remembered the password I had overheard once when Mr. Thompson was on the phone. "Secrets of the past," I murmured, typing the password. The screen opened, revealing a folder full of videos and documents. My heart raced. With trembling hands, I began downloading the evidence. It was only a matter of time before Mr. Thompson discovered I was there. And that's when I heard a noise. The sound of footsteps approaching. "Not now," I thought, trying to hurry the process. "Jake?" A familiar voice echoed down the corridor. It was Lucas. My stomach churned at the sound of his name. I wasn't sure if he was there to help me or if he had been swayed by Mr. Thompson's promises. "Jake, are you there?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Lucas! I'm here," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. He entered the office, and his gaze was confused, but there was a spark of determination in it. "What are you doing here?" "This is madness. I couldn't leave it like this. We need to expose what's happening," I explained as I continued downloading the files. "You need to see this." Lucas approached, and his eyes widened at the sight of the screen full of videos showing young people in risky situations. "This is insane," he murmured, shaking his head. "But what if he discovers you're here? He won't hesitate to silence us. He's tried that before. But now we have the advantage. We need to get out of here before he arrives." My heart was racing, but the adrenaline kept me focused. Suddenly, the door burst open. Mr. Thompson entered, his penetrating and cold gaze fixed on us. "What are you two doing here?" His voice was like poison, and the arrogance was evident in every word. "We're here to expose you," I replied, raising my head. "People need to know the truth about what's happening in this house." He laughed, a low and menacing laugh. "You really think you have control of the situation? You're just two naive teenagers. I've always been one step ahead." His confidence was palpable, and I felt a chill down my spine. "You think those recordings will make a difference? No one will believe you." "You're wrong," Lucas said, trying to muster courage. "We have friends, and we've already contacted the police. They're on their way." "Police?" Mr. Thompson seemed amusingly intrigued. "You really think they care about you? What do you have to offer?" "No one will care about two lost boys." "You underestimate the power of truth," I responded, feeling determination grow within me. "And you underestimate the courage of the people you think you control." At that moment, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. Mr. Thompson's expression changed to a mix of anger and fear. "You can't do this. You don't know who you're dealing with," he shouted, his arrogance fading. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I declared as Lucas and I prepared to leave. "And your time is up." The mansion's doors burst open, and the police stormed in, ready to arrest the man who had caused so much harm. I could hardly believe we were finally a step away from freedom. The tension that had accompanied me for so long was about to dissipate. As the police handcuffed Mr. Thompson, he cast me a look full of disdain. "You may have won this battle, Jake, but the war is far from over." But I no longer cared about his words. I was free. I had defended my friends and exposed the truth, and that was all that mattered. I looked at Lucas, who smiled, and a sense of relief enveloped me. As we left the mansion, the moonlight seemed brighter, and the air was filled with hope. I had faced my fears and fought for the people I loved. I looked back, seeing the mansion become a distant silhouette, and realized that although the path ahead was uncertain, I was ready to face it. The experience had transformed me, and although the scars of the past were still present, I now had courage. And this, I knew, was just the beginning.